So, on February 28th, something happened that sent shockwaves not just through the Middle East, but across the entire global economy. The US and Israel launched a coordinated attack on Iran. In this explainer, we're going to break down what happened, but more importantly, why it happened and what it really means for all of us.
And really, it all boils down to this one question. Because when a country that's a huge player on the oil market is at the center of a conflict, you better believe the fallout doesn't stay local. It reaches all of us, affecting everything from global security right down to the price we pay at the pump.
It all kicked off on February 28th, right as dawn was breaking over Iran. A massive wave of coordinated airstrikes from the US and Israel began hitting targets all across the country. We're talking major cities, key military sites, the works.
But this wasn't just a standard military strike. No, this was a decapitation strike. In the attack, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed along with other top officials. I mean, this single act took an already tense situation and just pushed it right to the edge of all-out war.
Well, Iran's response was exactly what you'd expect, swift and absolutely furious. A wave of missiles and drones was launched at US allies and assets all across the region. And just like that, what started as a targeted strike exploded into a regional war that's escalating by the hour.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll look at the initial attacks that set the region on fire, then the long road that led us here. We'll cover the shock to the global oil markets, the devastating human cost, and finally take a hard look at who wins and who loses.
All right, first up, a region on fire. Let's dig into just how fast this whole thing spiraled completely out of control.
Iran's retaliation was basically a massive show of force, and it was designed to send a very clear message. Look at this list. Their targets spanned the entire region, from neighbors like Saudi Arabia and Iraq to places as far west as Cyprus. They hit oil facilities, they hit military bases, they hit civilian areas.
So the big question is, how on earth did we get here? Well, something like this doesn't happen overnight. To really understand the attack, we need to rewind a bit and look at the path to war, because there were years of rising tension that made this moment feel almost inevitable.
You know, the roots of this conflict really go back years. You could argue it all started when the 2015 nuclear deal began to fall apart. Then, things got really hot just last year with a short but brutal 12-day war. And then, the situation got even worse when the Iranian regime violently cracked down on its own protesters. Each one of these events just kept adding more fuel to the fire, creating a powder keg that finally just exploded.
So what was the official reason given for the attack? Well, the White House put out a statement saying this was a last resort. They claimed Iran had rejected every opportunity to back away from its nuclear ambitions, basically leaving no other option on the table. But here's where the story gets really complicated. Because on one side, you've got the US and Israel saying diplomacy was completely dead. But on the other side, you have the mediators from Oman, the people who were actually in the room for the negotiations, and they're saying the talks were close to a breakthrough just hours before the first bombs fell. So you've got two completely different versions of reality.
Now, this war isn't just a regional crisis, not even close. Its effects are being felt all over the world. So let's turn to the global oil shock. To understand why this is such a big deal for the global economy, you have to know about this one little stretch of water, the Strait of Hormuz. It's the world's single most important oil choke point. Think about this. More than 20% of the entire world's fossil fuel supply has to pass through this narrow strait, and now Iran is threatening to shut it down.
So right before the attacks, things were pretty calm in the energy market. A barrel of oil was trading at a nice, stable $67. That was our baseline, right? A sense of normalcy that was about to be completely shattered.
And then Iran retaliated. The market's reaction was immediate, and it was dramatic. Oil prices jumped 10% almost overnight. But the real shocker was natural gas. It spiked by a staggering 50%. That's the immediate economic pain from this conflict, and it's being felt everywhere.
And listen to this. Analysts are warning this could just be the beginning. If this conflict keeps escalating, oil could easily soar past $100 a barrel. And a price that high, well, that's not just a headache at the gas station. It could be enough to tip the entire global economy into a full-blown energy crisis.
But, beyond all the market shocks and the military strategy, there is a far more devastating price being paid here. We have to talk about the human cost.
Those initial US and Israeli strikes were incredibly deadly. In just the first wave of attacks, more than 750 people inside Iran were killed. It is so important to remember that this isn't just a statistic. These are hundreds of lives, just gone in an instant.
And the tragedy just gets amplified when you look at specific events. In one of the most horrific attacks, a missile hit a school where families were trying to find shelter. 175 people were killed, and most of them were children.
And it's so critical to remember this war is happening after a period of just immense internal suffering. Just a few months ago, the Iranian people were facing this brutal crackdown from their own government, with estimates of up to 30,000 people killed. So they've been trapped between a repressive government at home and now a foreign attack from abroad.
In every single war, there are winners and there are losers. So in this conflict, who is actually gaining from all this violence? And who is the one paying the ultimate price?
The lines here are drawn pretty clearly, aren't they? The winners? Well, oil companies and arms manufacturers are seeing their profits soar. And the losers? Civilians caught in the crossfire. All of us as consumers facing higher energy bills. And it's a huge threat to global food security, which really depends on stable fuel prices to function.
As this conflict just rages on, the international community is scrambling to do something. The United Nations has issued an urgent call for an immediate ceasefire from all sides. It's really a desperate plea to pull everyone back from the brink before it's too late.
And that brings us right back to our central question. When a conflict over resources and power ignites right in the heart of the world's energy supply, we've seen who profits from it. But it leaves us with one final thought. Who truly, ultimately, pays the price?